Good morning and welcome back to this seasonal version of Garden Path. Today we are going to talk about dahlias. It's October, and if you have an October garden and you were smart enough to plant dahlias early in the winter or spring, you should be having beautiful blooms right now. We've got a special guest for you today. It's my good friend Donna Lane, current president of the New England Dahlia Society, past president of the Rhode Island Dahlia Society, and the Duchess of Dahlias of Norwood. So Donna is going to talk to you today a little bit about planting, what to do, how to care for them, and then we'll sort of end up with how to dig them up and store them for the winter so that you can keep those tubers going. So let's get to Donna.
Hi, thank you, Christine.
Thank you for coming and talking to us today about dahlias.
Okay, well, first of all, people want to know, how do I plant dahlias? And I think the first thing that you need to know is your soil needs to be about 6.5, your pH in the soil. The temperature should be 60 degrees, your soil temperature, if you want to directly plant in the ground, which most people do, especially if they plant more than 50 tubers.
Around what month is it 65 degrees? Or like when?
60 degrees?
60 degrees.
Usually the end of May is a good time. Same time you plant your vegetable garden would be a good time to plant your dahlias.
It's a good time frame. So, but if somebody wanted to start them earlier, what could they do?
You could start them inside 4 to 6 weeks earlier, and then harden them off outside before you put the plant in the ground. And that would be one single tuber that you want to plant. You do not want to plant a whole clump because it becomes unwieldy over time, and it also starts to deplete the energy within the tubers if you do that. You'll get a nice robust plant if you just plant one tuber with an eye on it, and it must have an eye, otherwise you won't get anything.
Sounds like a joke. What has an eye but cannot see?
Okay.
So there are so many places that you can buy dahlias. You know, sometimes you go to the big box stores and you see them in a bag. You go to the New England Flower Show and you see them sold there. There are catalogs. Do you have a favorite?
I actually very seldom buy them in the bags. A lot of those are tubers that have been sent over from Holland. They are called pot roots. And if you hold it up, you will notice that a lot of them are dangling, and that means that their necks are broken. So you might get one good one out of a whole hand of dahlias. I don't think it's a worthwhile investment. They're also typically not the best dahlias that there are. They're less robust than dahlias that are grown by specialty places. And there are a lot of them that are listed on the net. If you went to dahliaaddict.com, you will find all of the suppliers of dahlias that are listed. And you will also find all of the dahlias that are in commerce today on that site. It's a wonderful place to go. And they have lots of pictures that they can direct you to as well.
Is it in 12 steps?
No, it's pretty addictive. If you're brand new starting out to dahlias, I'd say if you wanted to buy a package from Home Depot or Lowe's or one of your local landscapers, I'd say that was probably fine. That's the way a lot of people get started. But if you really are interested in growing beautiful dahlias, I would suggest that you go to a specialty dahlia place and order them. They're becoming more expensive now, but for what you get at the end of the season, one tuber will net you a clump that you can divide and give you maybe four or more additional tubers for the following season. So that's a pretty good investment overall.
Yeah. You mentioned to me earlier that if you wanted to start it inside, don't start them in a window.
Correct. Christine had asked earlier, if you could start your dahlias inside, put them in a sunny window, and you could do that, but you're always going to have them straining to the light, and there's never enough light for them. But if you have a 4-foot fluorescent light with just a couple of standard cool white bulbs, or one cool white, one warm white, and you have a table with a couple of pots with dahlias planted in them, keep that 4 inches up from the dahlia tubers, you'll get very strong plants to set outside.
Do you have a particular month that you recommend things get started?
I always say I'd start them after the flower show, which is typically the end of March, but I found that they grow too large. So I would say mid-April is a very good time to start them inside. Then you usually have about a 12 to 14-inch plant that you can put outside for the season.
Oh, very good. So you've heard about finding tubers from reputable sites. Go to addicts.com. Dahlia Addict. Sorry, see?
No, one.
Dahlia Addict.
DahliaAddict.com.
If you're interested in finding that website, email me at miltongardenpath@gmail.com and we'll get you the correct information. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about is dahlia care in the garden. So we're going to show you what I should have done better. So let's take a walk to the other side. Okay, now we're standing in front of what is actually 2 plants. I started these in my greenhouse probably around March, and this orange one is called Moonlight Sonata, and it's supposed to be a dinner plate dahlia. Donna, what did I do wrong with this?
The main thing that you did wrong is you didn't stake it well enough. When you first put a dahlia in the ground, whether you use a plant or whether you use just a tuber, you need to put a strong stake, which is why you need to know what size your dahlia is going to be. This particular one, they say dinner plate, which is supposed to translate to a giant, which is it's 8 inches to over 10 inches in diameter. You have that type or that large a flower, which would be about like so, you need a better stake. Right now, Christine's got this puny little stake here.
Failure!
Now, she's also got a ring, which is a good idea, but what's happened is because of the weight of the plant, the plant is too heavy for this puny stake. I use 6-foot oak stakes that I pound into the ground, so you lose almost 6 to 8 inches of it. And you tie up your plant over the. Christine, it's not going to work.
Well, I'm optimistic. So
the other thing is when you start, when you get to a point where your center has blown, if you want more production, the more you remove these blooms,
you think?
the more flowers you're going to get. So what I would recommend is that you cut off anything that's past bloom.
Okay.
Okay, if it's blown at center, it's past bloom. Now you can still bring it in some cases, and put it in a vase in your house. That might be okay, but it will only last for about a day if you do that. So those are the only 2 things that I can think right now.
Well, next year I will do a better job.
And tie it about every foot.
Okay.
The nice thing about the open centers is the bees love them.
And as you can see, this shrub, I'm going to call it a shrub because it's sort of grown into that area, is covered with a lot of bumblebees, honeybees, and other pollinators. So thank you for sharing your wisdom about
You're most welcome.
what not to do. I won't cry. So now that we've looked at what not to do and when to properly stake a dahlia, Donna's going to talk to us about dahlia care so that you can get the energy going to one bloom. So thank you for bringing these gorgeous flowers.
You're most welcome. This is a really fun flower. This is AC Rosebud, which is one of the small dahlias, and it's an informal decorative. But what I wanted to show you, I purposely did not disbud this so that I could show how to disbud and why do you want to disbud. It takes away flowers if you disbud. So if you're new to dahlias and you just want the most dahlias that you can possibly have, don't disbud. But if you do disbud, you'll get better flowers, and you won't get more, but you will get better flowers and stronger stems actually. So each dahlia, no matter what size it is, and they go from over 10 inches in diameter to less than 2 inches in diameter. This happens to be a small, or in dahlia parlance, a BB, double B. Anyway, each dahlia has 3 buds, the main bud and then 2 side buds. What you want to do to disbud, to get better blooms and to get stronger stems, is to just pinch out the side buds. It's very easy when they're small. It's a lot more difficult when they're larger.
So do you do that while it's still on the plant?
While it's still on the plant. This is an example of one that one side was disbudded but the other was not. The flower is new to me this year. It's Holly Hill Madison, which is again BB, which is a small. And small is 4 to 6 inches in diameter. This is an incurved cactus versus the informal decorative. There are actually 20 different forms of dahlias. There's something for everybody. So this has one left in here, but because I took one out, it is doing very, very nicely. And in the beginning, someone had asked me, how do you control the height of dahlias? Because you can sometimes need a ladder to pick dahlias this time of the year. I have in the past on a couple of different varieties. And the secret is to pinch out the center after there are 3 sets of leaves. If you just pinch out the very center of the plant, you will be able to control the height of the plant, because it pushes the energy back down so that you have more arms to the plant coming and you don't have as much height. So
Very cool. And one of my favorite is, it's a smaller, what would you call it's Bishop of Landolph,
right,
but the foliage
it's dark foliage.
is
It's
darker,
beautiful.
and it creates more of a shrub. And if you get them to bloom nicely, you get these pops of red with an open.
Right, that's a peony dahlia. And peony dahlias are open-centered dahlias versus the informal decorative and the incurved cactus. You can see where these are closed centers. And this is an open center. The bees absolutely love the open-centered dahlias. And when the closed-centered dahlias blow, or they start going bad, not as attractive as they would be if the center isn't blown, gone by, I guess, would be the best way to put it. Then the bees will start to go to these as well, but primarily they'll go with the open-centered varieties.
It's a wonderful sight to see all the bees on the beautiful colors.
I had counted on one plant, which was an open-centered variety. I think there were 20 bees, 2 of them were honeybees, all the rest were bumblebees. There were a lot of flowers on the plant, and there were like at least 3 bees on each of the open flowers. It was amazing. I wish I had gotten a picture.
Some people have a great deal of success digging up their dahlias and then having them overwinter because they've stored them properly. I haven't, but Donna has, and she's going to talk to us right now on what to do. This is a clump that I cut back about a week ago just to let it harden off, or what's the term?
That's exactly right. It helps the dahlia the tubers to harden off, and it helps them because they need a coating in order to store properly. Just like a potato needs a skin, the dahlia needs a skin in storage. Otherwise, it will potentially rot. Now, one of the tubers obviously did rot underground. You want to this should have been left a little while longer to make it easier to clean up. You can rinse the thing off, get all the dirt off that way. I prefer to leave some of the dirt on. It helps to...
So if people wanted to do this, like at what point would they cut their plant down and leave in the ground or dig up?
All right, typically what happens is you would, when you have a killing frost, you would then cut your plant down 4 to 6 inches from the top, and then throw away your dahlia foliage. And I mean trash it. Don't put it in the compost pile, especially if you plan to use that compost for the dahlias next season, because dahlias do carry virus, and if you have virus in your foliage, that will carry over into your compost. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of any extraneous parts right now, just to get this cleaned up. After you've cut down your foliage after a killing frost, you would wait 1 to 2 weeks before you start to dig. What that will do is it will help to push the eyes so that you'll be able to see where to divide if you decide that you want to divide in the fall. And it will also start the process of
Hardening?
hardening off, but I'm trying to think of the word, but my brain isn't letting me. So here we have the rest of that tuber that was decaying underground. And you need to get rid of that. After you've cleaned all of the soil off of your tuber, what you want to do is just cut off all of the feeder roots, those little tiny roots at the bottom. They're not going to do anything. Another thing you want to cut off is, if you see this is attached to another tuber. It is no good. It will not create anything.
So it's like dangling. So you're going to cut that one off?
Cut, yep.
And throw it away?
Yes.
Is that the same with this one that fell off?
Yeah.
So chuck them.
Chuck them. And anything that's tiny, like this, is not going to produce anything. So those can all come off as well. And what you will have in the end are typically just those tubers that are worth saving.
And this was the tuber, these are the tubers from the A. Bishop of Landolph that I had planted in the spring.
And it was a single tuber. So you see at the end of the season what a single tuber can produce. If each of these has an eye, that would mean about maybe 10 tubers that you have here. Now each of them will not have an eye, guaranteed, but enough of them will, so you'll have a nice batch to plant next season. All right, we can start here. And always, if you get those pastry brushes, I find these are really good at cleaning up your plants. They're nice and soft, and it helps you to be able now to see what's underneath, to see where the eyes are. And always the eyes are on the collar, which is right here.
So this is the collar?
This is the collar, right here. Just above where the tuber enters the collar, and from the collar you have the stem. So first thing you want to do is to cut off the stem, because this still has water in it. And these used to be storage, water storage for the Aztecs. They had, you can see the moisture that's still in there.
Oh,
And
it's dripping.
if you were going to store this whole clump, rather than to divide it in the fall, you would sit it upside down for a day out of the sun, maybe in the basement, garage, or wherever, and let it drain before you put it away. Because if you put it away this way, you're going to have this type of problem over the winter. So we can clean up some more of this, so hopefully we'll be able to see eyes. But it hasn't been, how long has it been sitting, Christine?
About a week.
About a week.
Ay, 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 ay.
Well, if you can't find eyes, first of all, here's an example. This is rotting, so that's another thing that will have to come off to make sure that you're not going to have a problem in storage. And I'm going to take that little one off because it won't do much. Okay. Now, you're perfectly welcome to store this as it is. You said this is Bishop of Llandaff?
Yes.
All right. If you use a Sharpie with a fine point, you can label right on the tubers. And I strongly urge you to do that, because you're not going to remember what's what, and a tag can get lost. So you just write right on it. And if you have your own way of abbreviating, that's fine. If you don't, I would write it all out. I put Bishop of LL because that's how Llandaff is written. Now you'll notice, if you can see up that close, that the tuber is still too wet to accept our Sharpie. Most of it was fine, but when you get to the end, there was still a lot of moisture, so it's not working. If you label your dahlias when they're wet, you'll need an ink pencil, and I'm not sure where to get them anymore. I don't see them in the trade very often.
Probably find them online.
It's possible. We've tried and we haven't been successful, so I like to wait till they're dry so I know what I'm doing. If you can't find the eyes, now each of the ones that does have an eye you want to label. You don't want to just label one and then call it quits. You want to label more than one, because you may lose one of them. It may just rot in storage. If it rots in storage, you're going to not know again.
So do you leave them all clumped like that, or you take them off? And then
I have stored them this way in the past, but last year, because I had the time, I divided them, and I was much happier with the results, because I didn't have to spend as much time in the springtime dividing them. Plus, it's also easier to divide in the fall than it is in the spring, because your knives will cut through like butter.
Butter.
Like
you
butter,
think it's
Christine.
butter, but it's not, right?
Okay, so using some kind of a mat, I bought these inexpensive plastic things that are wonderful. You just use this rather than the top of your table.
Or your fingers.
All your fingers. Yeah.
We're getting close to Halloween, so it could be a Halloween-y episode, right?
And you can see it's still very wet. If you stored this the way it is, you'd leave it for a couple of days to dry, and make sure that your tubers are not shriveling when you do that. We can split this even more, because I do see some eyes, but you won't be able to see them on camera, I don't think.
Well, they could probably, we can have them get a close-up later.
All right.
So
I also have an X-Acto knife here with a number 11 blade that is fantastic at getting into the little spots.
So she just cut off some of the ring, the collar.
Yep.
No lipstick is on this collar.
All right, and you can see the eye is right here.
Okay.
All right. Now here I can't really tell where a lot of the eyes are. One of them I suspect I know, so I can go in. This is one of those jobs where you need to concentrate and be safe. Don't cut yourself. These X-Acto knives can leave a nasty cut. And this little one where we couldn't get at before, we're just going to cut that off. What you don't want to do is leave things that could potentially rot.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for showing us that. So once you've got them here, you just stick them in the perlite or the vermiculite?
Yeah, I would suggest using horticultural vermiculite, the large, not the fine type, because the fine type is, you can use it, but it's just, this is a lot better. And the vermiculite is better than using pet shavings or peat moss because there are no mold spores to interfere with your...
Okay. So you stick it in, you put
Once
it in a
it's
baggie?
dry, please make
Okay.
sure that it's dry before you stick it in and that you've labeled it. And then cover it with more vermiculite, put another one in, and then label the outside of the bag as well, just in case something rots.
And where do you store it?
Store it in an area that is cool. 42 degrees is ideal. And with some decent humidity, if you have a cellar that is like one of the old type with the stones, that's a perfect root cellar environment, perfect for storing dahlias. If you have a different type of cellar, put a thermostat up just to check and make sure that it's not too warm. If you're heading up to 50 degrees, it's kind of warm. If you're going down to freezing, it's too cold.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Donna. That's very helpful, and I think it clears up a lot of the mystery. So
Just one last quick thing, okay? Make sure you clean your tools, because if you've got any kind of virus that's in any of your tubers, you don't want to transfer it to another tuber that you're splitting, okay?
okay.
Isopropyl alcohol, good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, and Donna, thank you so much for sharing your wonderful wisdom. We hope you learned something. Another tip is if you are interested in finding the vermiculite, it is available online at Griffin's Greenhouse out of Tewksbury that has the larger chunks. So when you're planning your garden for next summer and you see all the catalogs coming that have dahlia tubers for sale, think about purchasing a couple and let me know how they come out, because it's such a beautiful way to end your fall in the garden. So tune in to the next garden show and we might have another surprise for you.